Welcome to Red Tiger Chronicles. This is Sifu Paul Mason, owner of Red Tiger Martial Arts in Cincinnati, Ohio, and this podcast is to help some of the most extraordinary martial artists that walk among us tell us their stories. All right, I am happy to welcome Ethan T1 Riley to the show today. He is a mixed martial arts fighter hailing from Cincinnati, Ohio, and he's also type 1 diabetic. And this is going to be a special episode airing in November, Diabetes Awareness Month. And I guess we'll just get right into it. Thanks for coming over, man.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
Great. I did a little homework last night and watched a couple of your fights. I actually first saw you at your pro-mma debut on February 3rd, Parakeet Springs in Louisville.
I don't know if it's parakeet or parakeet, but either way.
Yeah, something. But yeah, that was a nice card, to watch, and I had to rewatch it because it was several months ago. And then I did kind of a deeper dive and watched your fight against, I think his name's George Nichols. It was a 2 years ago fight.
Yep, February 2022.
Yeah, and that was an entertaining fight.
Yeah, George Nichols, another diabetic, by the way.
Really,
What?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Type 1?
Yep. That was a fun one because me and him had already known each other a little bit before that fight. And I was scheduled to fight somebody else, but there was some, shenanigans going on with the matchmaking. And the week of, I'm like, hey, I never got a packet for, my fighter info or entrance music. What's the deal? He's just like, oh, I don't have a fight for you. 2 days out from the fight.
Oh, wow.
And they're like, hold on, we might be able to get you a replacement. 30 minutes later, my coach calls me yeah, we got a new fight for you by the name of George Nichols. I'm just like, oh, that kind of stinks. I know him and he's another diabetic. But so on 2 days' notice, I end up getting a fight with another diabetic. And we go out there and we probably put on one of the better fights of the night. But yeah, it was a good one. That's probably my favorite fight story so far, just because of how everything came together. And like I said, I knew this guy a little bit beforehand. We were able to bond a little bit over the fact that we're both diabetic. So
How
cool
can you
story.
not? How
Cool
can you
story.
not? And I mean, fighting, that's what we do all day, every day, right? On the mat or off.
Yep.
So nobody knows how to dig deeper.
Yep, dealing with this stuff is a fighting, man. George really went out there, and we were able to, like it says, it takes two to dance, and we were able to put on a show that night.
Yeah, I remember watching that fight. It was a good fight.
Yeah, and what a perfect fight for me to watch for this episode, because I had no idea he was diabetic or type 1. So if he gets to listen to this or watch this, shout out to George Nichols. Hope you get some solidarity and feel some love from this podcast. That was and you're right, that was an entertaining fight. That dude is strong, number one. And it just makes me think about how Cincinnati is such a small town, number one, and it is a fighting town. There is a ton of...
For better or worse.
Yeah, for better or for worse. There's so many martial arts options, so many martial arts schools here, so many MMA camps, I think, and quality camps. I actually visited Vision one day after I started trying to teach my club, full time. It's a small group, and I was trying to see, if I could get my guys some sparring partners. The schedule hasn't lined up yet, but I did get to meet with Coach Pender, and he's a stand-up guy. And I watched a little bit of that class, man. And those guys, they're some hard hitters at Vision, and they're sharp.
I like Jeremy Pender, man. He's got some good dudes over there. He's got one of the guys that used to train at Club MMA with us, Frenchie. Obviously George. They got Perry Stargell over there, I think. They got a bunch of guys over there that are studs.
Yeah, and I've been to your place on the west side for a couple of seminars over the years. I met Coach Jeff, and of course we have Jacob, a guest on episode 2 that trains over there, and stuff. So it's Cincinnati's kind of a small town, masquerading
Everybody
as a big
knows
city.
each other somehow.
Yeah.
So it's fun stuff. But when I think about that fight, yeah, super entertaining. That dude is strong. I kept seeing him trying to go for takedowns, and they showed a little clip of his coach, telling him, don't go for the big lifts, try to get the sweeps and stuff. But I was just wondering, did your coach give you any advice in your corner? Any special?
Not really. Not from what I remember, at least. Like I said, the fight was put together on 2 days' notice, so there wasn't really much time to gather a game plan. The takedowns surprised me just because, like you said, he was strong as shit. So the takedowns surprised me, but just from training and whatnot and just certain emphasis on some things, I was able to get back up pretty easily, I feel like. So just a matter of finding the timing on the takedowns. First round, he managed to get a lot of them on me. Second and third round, I feel like I was able to get the timing on him and just kind of be like, okay, got you now. I'm able to stuff these and either completely negate the ground game or end up on top once I was there. So it was just a matter of finding the timing on those takedowns.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm not, I don't want to use, this podcast at all to be a platform to put, one art or one school over another, one fighter over another. But just because you're our guest today, I do want to recommend that our students watch that fight in particular because, we don't do a lot on the ground. Like our philosophy is we want to keep it standing. If we get pegged into the ground, we want some ground skills to get back up. And that was a clinic, for your like recovery from the ground, your butterfly guards and like how you're able to push him off and stuff like that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So, yeah, that should be some homework for us.
I would say anybody in the world listening to this podcast needs to watch that fight because not just the fight clinic, but like I'm going to keep bringing it back to the diabetic angle. That's what diabetes looks like. You can squash every one of these stupid myths that we keep perpetuating with all this, give yourself diabetes crap. That's what real diabetics look like.
Absolutely.
Go watch that fight.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's it.
I really don't want to spend a whole lot of time like talking about martial arts intricacies, ironically, because this whole thing is about the martial artist. So I was just really wondering, like, how did, how is it fighting? Like, how is it fighting MMA and being type 1? And do you have, give me any of your insights or if like George gave you any, insights from his perspective? Like, because, when you're in that situation, when you're in a high pressure situation, the adrenaline's got to be going. Adrenaline's a hormone, insulin's a hormone.
Man. Not just that. I have so many questions, like, and some of them might be too personal and absolutely be like, that's too personal. I don't want to answer that. But like,
Alex will edit it out.
I'm just curious.
I'll get into some stuff right now. Like,
do you wear a pump?
No, I don't do pump just because I feel like just the amount of activity you'd have to constantly be replacing the needle and the
that was going to be my question
there,
because I do, and I did actually train as well before I had some other stuff happen. And I'm medically not cleared to do martial arts ever again, which was the most heartbreaking thing. That's the first thing diabetes took away from me. Train wreck, right? But I used to train, and I remember one day I had my pump on, and we were just like farting around after class. Like, it was just like everybody's just camaraderie, right? On the mat, like horseplay.
Yep.
And I jumped on his back, and we were just like,
horseplay.
And I jumped on his back and I ended up ripping my own set out and I was like, and like there's blood everywhere and everybody's freaking out and I was like, I'm fine. But we weren't even fighting. Completely not practical for an actual MMA fight, obviously. But.
Yeah, so I haven't gone the pump route and I've had doctors and stuff try to like get me on that and like even say like, oh, even with your activity you should be fine. But I'm just like, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, it's a totally personal thing. If it's working for you.
I do all my injections. I do all my own testing and whatnot. So it's just like, unless like it gets to a point where it's like unmanageable, there's really no point in fixing it. As far as diabetes and fight camps, there's some stuff that goes into it. I feel like overall, I've done 9 MMA fights right now, and the blood sugars hasn't even been like a huge problem for me. Like every now and again, I'm just like, okay, I got to take a break, feel a little low, give me a Gatorade, that kind of jazz. But for the most part, I manage it pretty well. Usually just keep something with me at all times. Fight day is where it gets a little bit tricky because let's talk about like fight week, okay? So fight week, you're doing the weight cutting and whatnot, so that already brings complications in of itself. Make the weight, cool. Now your body's getting back used to eating all this food again, eating all this stuff again. No matter how I've looked in a fight, I guarantee you my blood sugars have been way high during some of the fights you guys watch more often than not because, like he said, there's a mix of adrenaline in there that's being spiked. Obviously, food that you haven't eaten in eight weeks going back into your system that causes your blood sugar to spike. It's just a whole lot going into it, and I guarantee you, after each one of my fights, when I go to test my blood sugar, it's usually in the 300s or whatnot, just because of all that hormone and stuff just going into it.
Okay, so for the people listening that don't have diabetes, or even the people at this table that don't have diabetes, you cannot imagine the extra. It's like, imagine doing that MMA fight.
It's a fight within a fight.
Any fight with like a weight vest on your back and weights on your legs and weights on your arms. Cause like a 300, you do not feel like doing shit. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
I couldn't
it's
imagine.
like having the flu.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like, right?
Yeah, regular day-to-day life, but once you're getting ready for a fight, adrenaline's so high, don't even pay attention to the blood sugar unless it's like starting to drop low.
Yeah.
That high, I usually don't feel it until afterward, thankfully. Yeah. So it's just...
But can you imagine what it would feel like to fight without that?
Yes. Yes, it would be awesome.
When were you diagnosed?
So crazy.
I was diagnosed in 2010. I was, I think, age 12 going on 13. Yeah. So I had lived already 12 years of my life, eat whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted to. But then after that, it was a huge adjustment period.
I feel like that's got to be harder. Like, I was 3 years old.
Yeah. I've heard some people say that to me, that like they feel like they had it easier being born with it because they never had to make those adjustments. But yeah, it's something. Whenever I was first diagnosed, honestly, the biggest thing I was scared of was not being able to do stuff like MMA, because I'm just like, oh my God, this is going to limit like everything I can do in life. So being able to still find avenues of success and still being active, because I can't imagine myself doing a fucking office job or nothing like that. I just can't do it. So being able to find something that I can still be active in, it's just like, okay, I got to make the most of this while I can, because I don't know when, like, it could get worse. It could get worse.
Yeah.
Just be realistic about it.
Were you a child martial artist?
No, I wasn't at all. Growing up, I was a huge fan of pro wrestling, actually.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
And, like, I still am, but, like, there was a point in time where, like, the stuff just got too childish. I'm just like, what else is there out there? And then I got turned on to MMA from... I think it was the Ultimate Fighter Season 10 with Rampage and Rashad, the season that Kimbo Slice was on.
Yeah.
And then from there, it was just like a snowball effect. Like, oh my God, this shit is so cool, because obviously Kimbo was on there. That's what got me introduced to it. But then I started getting to know the other fighters and Rampage and Rashad, and I got invested in that fight. And then from there, it's just like, how much more can I figure out about this sport? And for the next 2 years, I just let all that shit get into my brain. And then eventually it's just like, how can I get into this sport? Physically.
Okay.
Once I got into high school, I decided I wanted to try to join the Oak Hills wrestling team. While going for that, I ended up finding flyers for the gym I'm at now, Club MMA. And I was just kind of like, well, wrestling would have kind of led to this anyway, so might as well just get started. And then from there, joined the high school MMA team at the time. From there, joined regular classes, started training with the fighters. Bada bing, bada boom. It's just been a good thing ever since, I'll say.
So you've been there a long time then, since high school?
Yeah.
How old are you now?
27.
Okay. So good 10 years.
Yeah.
Or maybe a couple more. That's cool.
About 12 years
I wish
now.
I would have started when I was young.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something I hear from everybody, and I could say that myself included. I wish I would have, done it earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I would have done it earlier. You're pointing at me, like.
Well, I figured you had some more questions. Like,
I've got 5 million questions.
Keep it rolling.
Yeah, I was wondering, and this might just be my personality. I don't know how much of it's my personality and how much of it's diabetes, because I like I said, I wasn't born with it, but I don't remember life without type 1. Like, it's just always been there. And it's always been like this sort of, my body is throwing down a gauntlet, and like, I'm this,
like I was talking about the fights. It's a fight within a fight.
It's a fight within a fight. And it's kind of, I've likened it before to the Johnny Cash song, A Boy Named Sue, right?
Yep.
So I have always had this, like, try me attitude. And I don't know how much of that is just my personality versus how much of that is diabetes, being like, every day you wake up and your own body of all things is trying to take you out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So what is somebody else going to do to you? So I guess my question is, how much of that did that factor into you wanting to be a martial artist? Did you feel, were you scrappy before diabetes, or were you even more scrappy after diabetes?
I think both a little bit. I grew up with an older brother, and just getting my ass kicked by him all the time, just being the younger brother, like, that made me automatically scrappy. But I do think, like, once I was diagnosed with diabetes, there was kind of like a flip of the switch, even at a young age, because it's just like, don't really know how much time you got in this world, to be honest. So it's just like, better get around to fucking doing the damn thing, or else life's going to take you out. So it's just like, whatever you want to do, you better get on it.
You never know what your new normal is going to be day to day.
Yep. I remember being first diagnosed. I think I was 90 pounds when I was admitted to Children's. I think my grandma thought it was cancer. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. It was bad. It was real bad. So, yeah, I would say, like, I don't really remember too much about, like, mindset at the time, but there was probably, like, a flip of the switch, like, gotta get on some stuff, even at that young of an age.
So, here's how I got into martial arts. And again, with the scrappy competition, I was always scrappy.
Mm-hmm. I can tell.
And so Paul started training with our Sifu. He had a lot of, I'm going to call them anger issues. He didn't have a lot of guy friends, like, outside of work and stuff. And I remember I was having him hang curtain rods when we moved into this house, I think. And the minute he would touch a stick, it turned into just like, it's like his Filipino instincts would take over. And I was just like, you need to be training martial arts. Like, and he was like, oh, I was thinking about going to this school where they teach, the Filipino stick arts. I'm like, do it. And he met our Sifu there instead, or when he went to check it out. So he ended up, like, kind of dipping his toe into both. Then he was training for a couple of years, and they had like I don't know, they were trying to bolster, recruits, and he had like a free seminar thing. And I went and I met our Sifu, and he was just so engaging, and he was like, you should come train. And I was like, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. There were no other women in the school at the time. And
that's your avenue right there.
And he was like, you should come train. And I was like, yeah, okay. I think I ran it by Paul, like, is this going to bum you out? And he's like, no, because I'm in the advanced class. And I was like, oh, you don't know what you just did. And I felt the switch when he was like, oh, I probably won't even see you because I'm in the advanced class. And I was like,
oh, you going to see me?
I am coming for you. And I think I trained at that time. I trained like 4 days a week. I was in that school, and I was like, I am going to catch you hard and fast. And I don't know. I guess I did, but I still feel like.
How long was it until you eventually worked your way up to his classes?
Probably not as long as it should have been, honestly. Yeah. But like, there just weren't enough. I think it was there was no one else that had that kind of, like, impetuousness and that drive.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like I was either like leaving people behind or, it was just
4 days a week is a lot.
It is a
for any
lot.
kind of
Yeah,
training.
it was
so.
probably like about a couple years or less, and it would have been sooner. But at one time, I worked for about 4 years at nighttime, so we would just pass each other, right? And so I would go to try to hit classes in the daytime, and you were doing night times because you're 9 to 5 or.
But yeah, and like I said, I was always scrappy, so I think that kind of helped. It wasn't like they had to teach me.
You already had a certain level of feistiness about you a little bit.
I already knew how to fight.
Yeah.
Like, I would throw these hands.
Mm-hmm.
I needed some technical details and some fine tuning.
But you already had the right attitude.
Yeah, and it wasn't like the people that you have to teach them to get over, like, their fear of hitting people or,
Or being hit.
Yeah, I was not afraid to get hit by any means. So I caught up pretty quick, but I do feel like there's still some like drinking of tea that needs to happen in there.
Yeah.
But I'm also, I'm still also very, like, I will sit back and watch and think about things. And, at the end of the day, it's kind of like, I understand that about myself. And I understand that, like, I'm unnecessarily scrappy sometimes.
And that's how it is.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think it's diabetes. Like, I'm hyper aware of everything that's going on, right? You do take, that's the other thing it does to you is it makes you monitor yourself.
Yep.
And I think I've turned that into monitoring not just my physical body, but like my thought processes too.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times like I'm just out and about, and sometimes like even like in a party setting or something like that, I just gotta be like, how's my body feeling? How's my blood sugar doing? Good. Okay, let's just keep going.
The self-check-in, you do it.
Yeah, you have to do that, right?
Yeah.
Just side note for the younger folks, single folks out there, like sharing this type of, I don't even want to call it a hobby, but this type of lifestyle with your partner is like beyond enriching because, if you have that mindset, I call it fighter mindset, and not talking about on the mat, but in life. And then you can share that with your partner and they have the same mindset and they understand where you're coming from when you approach conflict and you can understand where they're coming from. That goes a long way to building a strong relationship, and the benefits like outweigh the unnecessary scrappiness that you might encounter. Right?
Yeah, I feel that.
You always have a training partner too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I should have brought Maria over. She would have loved this.
So you have a significant other?
Yeah, and she trained.
She trained?
Okay.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. I should have brought Nikki.
Yeah. We need more mics. We need
Yeah, we wouldn't have enough mics. That's true.
Yeah, but awesome. So how did you guys meet? Training or?
We met through training. We were, I want to say, friends for about 2 years just on the mat before we started dating. We got real close because I think I was going on my 5th amateur fight and she was deciding she wanted to try it and make her amateur debut. And just through that process of fight camp, she was asking like a lot of questions about the process and whatnot. And from there, it just kind of flourished into what we have now. We've been dating for 2 years now, but I'd say fight camp is what kind of like started it all off,
Yeah, it's awesome.
We were real close before that, but like she told me that after fight camp is just like, I think I kind of like this guy. So from there we started hitting it off, going out to eat and whatnot, hanging at her place, and then been together for close to 2 years now.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's got to be in our DNA. Our like primitive ancestors probably selected mates, because they saw that warrior that could provide and fend off woolly mammoths.
I think for the scrappy women of the world, which it sounds like, did you say Maria?
Yes.
Sorry. It sounds like Maria is one of those.
Oh, she's scrappier than me. Not even in a fighting sense, just in life.
Just trust. If you're that kind of woman and you know that about yourself, and this is just my opinion, and call me wrong, maybe it's not this way for everybody, but like, I couldn't be with somebody that I could beat up. So like, he had to be tougher than me or I'm just going to be a bully. Like,
There's got to be someone to
That's
tame
fair.
the beast a little
That's
bit.
fair.
there's got to be somebody that can be like, okay, you're getting out of line. And I'll be like, okay, you're right. Because I know that about myself. And that's just me. Again, that's just me. I'm certainly not going to kowtow to anybody. But
So has she, I don't know, how long have you guys been together?
2
2
years now,
years.
about 2 years now.
Has she been around you when you've been experiencing like a bad low or a bad high? Or do you have bad lows or bad highs?
Not really. No, you're talking about blood sugar.
Yes,
right?
yes.
No, not really. Like I said, I feel like I'm pretty in control of that aspect of my life to where I'm just like, hey, babe, I'm low. I'm going to go grab some sugar real quick. Or, babe, I'm high. I'm going to take some insulin real quick. With highs, I don't really like, the mood doesn't change. I'm able to usually like fine tune that and just be like, okay, I just need to get some insulin in me. No, she hasn't really been around me for any like bad experiences diabetic wise. Knock on wood.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Why can't you be more like Ethan?
Well, because
It's okay.
I mean, that's a thing to
yeah.
address too. Like
I'm just playing. Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
but diabetes is different for everybody. Like it's one of those things. It's like a spectrum, right?
Everybody's got their own thing going on with this stuff.
And mine is qualified like paperwork. It's qualified as brittle. My highs get very high. My lows get very low.
I had a coworker named Gary. Whenever I worked at Kroger, he had a hypoglycemia unawareness, which means his blood sugars would drop and he wouldn't know when they're low. So it's just like,
yeah,
Gary, you're not looking too good, or Gary, you're stumbling everywhere. Let's go get you. This thing was chocolate milk, so it's just like,
yeah, there have been times.
Everybody's got their own scary thing going on with this stuff, and I'm just really thankful that right now I've managed to have the control that I have of it that I do. So seeing other people's like bad experiences with it, it really motivates me to be like, I really got to be on top of my shit, especially if I want to keep pursuing mixed martial arts too.
Yeah. I think the worst that I've had, and I was living alone at the time, so I don't know if I've got angels or what, but I think I was cleaning my house. So you're already like up doing stuff and you're kind of, oh, I'm sweaty. It's probably because I'm cleaning the house. And I started feeling, I was like, man, my eyes don't want to, maybe I should check my blood sugar because it was a CGM at the time, right? Mm-hmm. Did a finger stick and it was 25. And I was like, I'm still standing up.
Uh-oh.
This is a little crazy. And, of course, the minute, because I do have the same thing, because I've had this for 44 years now. And, like, your body just starts tuning out. Like, it just starts ignoring stuff, right? It starts ignoring signals.
Oh, we're used to this. Yeah.
Yeah, this feels fine. Whereas, like, my mother-in-law next door, she's type 2. And she'll say, oh, I had this really scary low and I was sweaty. And I was like, oh, what was it? And she's like, it was 74. And I'm like, oh, that's
not even low.
That's cute.
What is normal?
That's cute. Normal is like 80 to 100.
For me, it's 70 to 120.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the normal.
So it can be different for everybody.
Yes.
So you brought up my mom, who is I gotta shout out a reason for why I'm here. Dear sweet lady, type 2.
She's wonderful.
But yeah, since you mentioned type 2s, I got to address the fact that, this is November is not just type 1 month that I almost made the mistake of saying in the beginning, but is all diabetes month. And even the type 2s didn't do this to themselves. That is something that I know gets under your skin and it gets under my skin because I trained a guy. He trained with us for about a year, I think, before you came, Alex. He's about 400 pounds, possibly an alcoholic, and just like had terrible eating habits. Was not diabetic, right? So if you could back yourself to diabetes, every overweight person would have it, and that's just not the case. Right?
I used to have that that chip on my shoulder, right? Initially, especially coming up as a kid, and I didn't understand things either. And I was like, I'm not the same as...
There's still some things I'm being educated on as far as diabetes goes.
Well, I mean, doctors don't even know, right?
Yeah.
So, as a kid with type 1, there weren't a lot of other type 1 kids. It's becoming more and more prevalent. And so and I also grew up in sorry, I can't say that word.
Rural?
Yeah, I'm from the South and I can't say that word.
Rural.
There are words I cannot say, and that is among them. I grew up in Western North Carolina. Shout out to North Carolina right now. They're all struggling. But everybody around me, they called it the sugar. We got the sugar. And I still say that. Like, I have like a group of diabetic friends, and we have like our secret Facebook group, and it's called We've Got the Sugar.
That's funny.
Because,
that's hilarious. I've never heard it referred to.
We got the sugar. Got the sugar diabetes. And I don't know if that's a Southern thing, but it was always like, you know, you go to Thanksgiving or whatever, and all of your like older relatives that are type 2 are like, they want to talk to an 8-year-old about like, yeah, like their feet and all this stuff. And I'm like, this is not the same. Like, I had that understanding as a kid because I was like, what you're talking about sounds nothing like what I go through. So I kind of always had this weird, like, this isn't the same thing. And I was always aware that I knew how I became diabetic. And it was because I got chicken pox when I was 3. My immune system reacted. So that's how, I stopped producing insulin. And I knew that that wasn't how it happened to them. And everything you hear in the media and everything you hear from doctors, I did for a long time think that it was a lifestyle thing with type 2. But then as an adult, I start talking to all these different people, right? And I will never, ever, ever forget, and I'm not going to name his name, but we were at the Arnold Bodybuilding Expo, right? Because we used to go up there all the time. Before the MMA crowd came, it was all the bodybuilding crowd.
Yeah, I used to be real big into that.
And stuff. Yeah, the Arnold Classic, man.
Where
that
I
was
did my first
good
fights
time.
at it, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And we were talking to this guy, and my pump started beeping. I pulled it out of my pocket, and he was like professional bodybuilder. He was ripped. And so my pump starts beeping, and I just adjust, and he's like, what's going on with that? And I'm like, oh, this is my insulin pump. And he was like, wait, so you're walking around with basically an insulin IV all the time? And I was like, that's a good way to put it. And he was like, how are you not a big fat person? And I was like, what do you mean? And so, and this is why I'm not going to name names, but he was telling me how there's like this whole, and I was unaware of this, this is just my ignorance, but like there's this whole subculture of the bodybuilders who, because they get screened for like steroids and things like that, they can't screen for insulin because guess what? We all make insulin.
Yep.
And he was like, we take insulin as non-diabetics to help us build muscle because it's a growth hormone. And it was like, when he said it like that, it blew my mind. And I was like, now it all makes sense. Like, is there a correlation between being overweight and being type 2? Yes, but we have it backwards. Because if you're type 2, you're resistant to your insulin, so you can have, depending on how resistant, and type 1s can be resistant too, you can have exponentially more growth hormone floating around in your system. And if you're not powerlifting all day long, it's still an excess of a growth hormone. So guess what's going to happen?
Yep.
You're going to get fat.
Yep.
And like all of a sudden, this just became like my cross, my soapbox. I drag it out anytime I get a chance to be like, don't blame these people for their disease.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they have a metabolic disease, whether it's type 1, whether it's type 2. The avenues to this disease are very and vast. And it's just crazy.
Yeah, I remember years ago I was listening to like some radio NPR, and they had a scientist on there, and he was talking about, I guess back when we were cavemen, something about how there was like some type of evolutionary process, which some folks that maybe were resistant to some forms of cancer, they developed a gene that helped them resist cancer, but it also made them more genetically susceptible to being type 2 diabetic, right? So it's like something that.
Well, how did I lose both of those lotteries then? Let's talk about that, because there was like this whole side quest where I had cancer too.
Luck of the Irish, as they say.
Look.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was a good time because Like, I had cancer and they put me on immunotherapy. And I was like,
that's got to be such
so
complications to the body and
we're going to
whatnot.
cattle prod my immune system. This should be a good time.
Weren't you like training during that time too?
Yeah, I went to,
Yeah, training, working.
Don't let nothing stop you, right?
Tough as fuck over here, right?
Yeah, that's what.
you can't.
I'm the MMA fighter, but you sound like you're the toughest one at the table.
No, man. I'm telling you, that's just the way we're built. That's what people have wrong about diabetics. That's the way we're built.
Any other go ahead.
No, I was going to say, like, you were starting to tell us before the mower turned on over there, about like your diagnosis story, and I am interested to hear that. And I think it's a valuable thing because people might be feeling some of this stuff and not know what they're feeling.
So unlike you, I can't like name like a chicken pox like story that's just like this is where my pancreas started not producing insulin. I can just talk about that time period. This is like between May and June of 2010. Summer break had just started, all that good jazz. I would find myself in lots of situations, just sitting around the house playing video games sometimes, where I would get lightheaded or fatigue. And I'm just like, as a young boy, I was just dealt with it, you know? But then people around me were just like, starting to lose a lot of weight there, Ethan. Are you doing okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm still getting around well, you know, still playing like a little boy would, you know. It got to a point where I was staying at my grandmother's house up in Goshen for a week, and I was constantly thirsty to the point I was drinking out of a faucet just because that's how thirsty I was, and I couldn't hold down any meals at the time. Me and some cousins were playing in the pool. I was bruising easily. The day before I went into Children's to get my diagnosis, I was throwing up. Only place I felt like solitude was taking a hot bath. Then from there, she's like, okay, we're getting you into Children's right now because this is not good. Got in there. I had kind of diagnosed myself at the time because I had heard stories from a 6th grade teacher of mine about like how diabetes can be diagnosed and some stuff that could be going on. I didn't think it was cancer. I had a grandma that thought it was cancer, but I didn't think it was cancer. I was like, seems like diabetes with the constant thirst and whatnot. So got into Children's. They ran some tests, got some fluids and stuff back in me, started putting me on insulin, and they were just like, yeah, you're type 1 diabetic. Stayed in Children's for about a week, got all my stuff figured out, and then from there, she's like, okay, this is my life now. Can't eat whenever I want. I still kind of ate whatever I wanted at the time. I was young enough to where diet didn't really have to change too much. I just couldn't eat whenever I wanted because insulin has a timetable as far as like when it gets into use. So, yeah. Definitely a huge adjustment at the time.
I can't imagine having to, like as a 12-year-old kid, having to just completely change your diet. Like
all of a sudden you have to view food as a math equation.
Right?
Yep.
Like, I pretty recently kind of started tracking what I eat, and it's hard. I couldn't imagine doing it as a young kid.
Thankfully, though, like, my mom was there through the whole process of me being in Children's, so she was with all the specialists, getting all the info she needed. My grandma was a huge help too, so once I was brought home, like, they did a bunch of the stuff to where I didn't have to worry about it, but once I got to the point where I was just like, I think I know what I'm doing with this now. It was just it was as smooth sailing of a process as that could have been. Like overall, not smooth sailing, but that's about as smooth sailing as it could have been. So, obviously, really thankful for the support system I had around me because without them, I don't know how it would have gone.
Yeah.
Any other misconceptions that might like get to you or?
So I always go back to the diet thing, especially as a fighter too, because as a fighter dealing with like diet restrictions and weight cutting and whatnot, you're already like taking a lot of stuff out of your diet. But once I'm done with the fight, I eat whatever I want. As soon as I'm done, it's just like, I'm going to eat whatever I want because, A, I'm a diabetic, so I already have those restrictions anyway as far as when I can eat. And B, I just got done doing this big event. I'm going to eat whatever I want. Don't judge me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And the truth of it at the end of the day is like, you've circled that nutritional wagon more than most people who are eating that stuff because they don't have a disease and they don't have to think about it. Like, you know exactly what's going into your body.
Yep.
And you know how to deal with it.
Yep.
Like I said, we can eat whatever we want unless it's poison.
Yes.
We can eat whatever we want. It's just we have to look at that as a math equation on a whole different level than
like
anybody
stuff
else.
in high sugar or high carbs. You got to calculate that differently than you would just your regular meal, you know?
And things like, and I'm still learning things all the time. I have an amazing group of diabetic friends around me, and they're truly fascinating people. Like, I know 2 women who are pharmacists, pharmacy background, and they're type 1 diabetic. And I've learned so much from them. One of them is now a diabetes educator, which I wish I would have stuck with things and gone that route myself, because I could be truly helping some people instead of being a web designer, which I'm not really helping anybody with that. But
there's still time.
Yeah. But she was like, yeah. And, she'll just throw things out there. And I'm like, wait, let's pick this apart. And one of the things that I recently learned is the reason that I have such a hard time calculating for things like rice is because rice has a different carb count depending on how long it's cooked. And if you didn't cook it yourself, you don't even know.
Yep.
So good luck with that.
And sometimes it is just about problem solving on the spot. Sometimes it is just about, okay, this restaurant I just went to doesn't have the nutritional count on all their stuff.
Oh,
I have to take an educated guess based on, have I eaten this before?
Yep.
So,
yep. And I don't know if you're like me, but, and Paul laughs at me all the time. Like, we have our, restaurants that we like to go to, and I always order the same thing.
Yep.
And like, even our chef friend Steven makes fun of me. He's like, you're going to have that again? I make other stuff. And I'm like,
this is why I'm comfortable with eating, and also I don't got to do the math.
I don't have to do the math, and I'm an English major. Like, I don't like maths. Me and maths are not friends.
As soon as they introduced the alphabet, I checked out of math.
Exactly, same. But yet, our bodies checked us back into maths. Yay! Yeah. It's a good time. It's a good time.
I can definitely relate on. I don't really change up my eating habits too much. I don't like to do it because that's just...
It's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
I found what works for me, so that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, that makes sense.
Diabetics, man, again, we're the fighters. We're the original around and find out gang. Because that's how you do things. You're...
Whenever we get some more of these, I'm going to get you one.
Yes, I would love
want one
it.
too.
I got you guys.
Because I'll go to my endocrinologist and they're like, oh, we'll talk through some things. And, she's like, well, maybe we should try you on it. Because I'm also really bad, especially with the pump, because the pump lets you be a little bit lazy. I'm not gonna lie. And when I first especially started on the pump, I would forget to pre-bolus food.
Yep.
And it's like, beep, 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 beep. I'm like, oh, crap. I forgot to bolus for that. Right? So I'm really bad about also, especially at restaurants, can you grab restaurants? So imagine going into a restaurant and you look at the menu and you get their vague description. They're not giving you counts.
They're not giving you portion sizes.
They're not giving you portion sizes. They're not giving you, sometimes you don't get pictures. You just get this weird description.
They're not telling you what additives they're putting in.
They're not telling you anything. The amount of information you get from a menu is so little most of the time, unless it's a chain. And sometimes you can Google a PDF and zoom way in and find carb counts. But if it's like a standalone restaurant, you don't know. And so you're ordering this food. So the rule of thumb is 15 minutes ahead, you're supposed to bolus for your food. That's what we call taking insulin. We call it bolusing.
Yep.
So you're supposed to say, okay, this is approximately my best guess on how much is in this food. And sometimes you have to look at it and what, are you going to sit there and stare at your food for 15 minutes? I'm not.
No.
I'm going to take that insulin right now and I'm going to start eating. So long story short, they were like, okay, if this is your bad behavior that we have to work around, we're going to put you on this different insulin. So they put me on Fiasp.
Mm-hmm.
So, because it works that much faster, right? You only have to like pre-bolus, like it starts working within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's nice. Not gonna lie, I'm still on it because I still have that bad habit. I have to look at the food and go, okay.
Educated guess.
And this is the guess, but like most people don't look at food that way.
It's not ideal, yeah.
I've never looked at food any other way that I remember. And it's sometimes I think, I just stop and I go, people just walk up to a buffet or
and just
menu,
grab the shit,
and
right?
they're just like, this sounds good to me.
Yeah.
And maybe they're on a diet and they're making choices, like better lifestyle choices for themselves, and they restrict themselves because of that. But they don't have like this weird, like, immediate consequences to my choices thing that you and I have.
It's
right?
like that meme where the guy's thinking and you see all the equations and stuff. You guys.
Yes.
It's like, what's his
Charlie.
face off of The Hangover?
Yeah.
Alan, whenever he's doing the maths in his head about the cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it is. That's what it is.
exact-
I'll look at a muffin out at a restaurant if I'm having dessert or breakfast or something. And it's just like, okay, they don't have the exact count on this, so I got to do my best. Look at all the like doughy. Look at all the blueberries around it. I'm just like, how?
And have they added fat to this? Because that's going to extend things.
But I'm curious. Like, I got a couple questions. Like, what do you treat yourself with after your fights? What's your favorite thing?
It's definitely pizza. It's
Right
definitely
on.
pizza. Pizza and buffalo wings. The buffalo wings aren't too bad, but the pizza, I'm just like, okay, I'm turning the diabetes off for one night.
Gotta do it.
So where would you recommend in town? What's your favorite pizza in town?
So if we're going like commercial wise, I'd say Papa John's. I love Papa John's pizza. If we're going commercial, obviously being in Cincinnati, LaRosa's is always an option.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, you do got your good local joints. So you got a lot of Trotta around. You got places like that. But
Yeah.
if I'm just going basic, if I'm just like, give me the closest pizza nearby, give me the commercial style, give me Papa.
You just pick the places that's closest to where you just got through fighting at and stuff like that. Or-
Yeah,
Okay.
for the
cool,
most
cool.
part, yeah.
Right on. So I was thinking about this. So your pro debut in Louisville, you were fighting this guy from, I guess, Birmingham, Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of confusion for me with his name because they kept referring him to as like
Austin, Gregory.
Yeah.
I'm still not too sure.
Austin Threat, Gregory Freeze, Austin Freeze. But at one point they referred to you as Ethan Phillips. So I don't know if they were just getting their cue cards mixed up or whatnot. But Jacob and I were talking about this, and I was like, I thought, I mean, I don't know anything about judging. One reason I hate tournaments and stuff is because I don't understand rules and stuff. But I thought you would have got the W because you were so active on the ground, and I thought you were gonna get that Darce choke for sure.
I was close on a couple of the Darces and the guillotines. I know that for sure.
And he just he was a really I guess his defense. I mean, his defense was good. He was like just kind of a blanket, like a lead blanket.
Yep.
On top of you. And I was just wondering, is there any difference to like enduring something like that, just being like laid on and smothered, to how that affects your blood sugar, rather than maybe like being active and keeping it standing and being like mobile and
Not that I've experienced, no. Like I said, I check my blood sugar after each and every one of my fights, and they're usually around the same every time. They're usually always pretty high no matter what, so I don't think the style of fight that just happened really has an effect. I think just the fact that it is a fight, your adrenaline is spiking is the biggest thing there.
And did you think you were going to get the W? Or?
No. So this happened, if you go back and watch my amateur debut back in 2020, it was kind of like the same kind of fight where I was put up against a stud wrestler. The wrestler got the takedowns on me, but I was the more active party. I appreciate that about myself, and I appreciate some fans around me that are just like, oh, you was the more active guy. You was the one constantly hunting for submissions and striking on bottom. You should have won. at the end of the day, unfortunately, judging in MMA is still kind of a touchy subject. But if you're the one on bottom, you're losing more often than not. So that's how I looked at it.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And how I look at getting better from it is I got to work to either get better at the submissions or get better at getting the fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah. Good attitude.
And also get better at maybe holding people down myself. Yeah. Wink, wink. Could be something in store for the next fight.
I love I love the stand-up stuff too.
I do too. But
when you were with when I was watching that fight against Nichols, you did this kind of a jab uppercut and then came out with an overhand or a cross, and that was just spoke to me because it's kind of like a pan martial arts thing. Like that's something like I've trained in the Filipino martial arts, right? And it just kind of like crosses the boundaries of like all the stand-up stuff. So I like seeing stuff like that I can, that I enjoy doing and can relate to. But I get it.
I'm not the best athlete by any means. I didn't grow up like a natural athlete playing all the sports. I'm just a fighter. I'm just tough. I just go out there and I'm willing to put it all on the line, and good luck getting me out of there. I do pride myself on being a student of the game as far as you can name a fight from 10 years ago and I'll have recollection of it. You can talk about old school boxing fights, and even though I'm 27, I can talk to you like I was there because I study the game like it's nobody's business.
For sure.
I pride myself on that. So seeing any technique, whether it's from taller person, shorter person, bigger person, smaller person, I'm still like, how can I work that in my game?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you gotta fight smarter.
Yeah. If you're not smart, you got to be tough.
Yep.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
You got to be both. You got to be both.
If you're both, that's
you got to be both.
That would be ideal.
If you're going
right?
to be dumb, you got to be tough. That's what I say to my dog all the time.
Yeah. Alex, you got anything that was on your?
I was just curious. It doesn't really have anything to do with diabetes, but so I'm thinking about, I've fought in like some tournaments and stuff, but we have like full gear on and everything, and I just think about like how I feel after those. I'm always like so sore, broken, I feel like, and I just wonder, like something like you're doing where you guys do not have gear on. I know every hit is a lot more than what I'm feeling. I just wonder what your recovery's like after like a tough fight.
Just usually don't train at all for the following week. I usually just take the whole week off, and after that, I'm usually pretty good. I've had a couple fights that were like really kick heavy, whether it was me doing the kicks or whether it was me receiving the kicks, where it's taken more than a week to just recover the legs because, ankles get smashed up, shins get dinged up, getting kicked in the thighs a bitch, so...
That's what I always think about, like checking kicks with shin guards on is fine, but like I'm always like, I know it's gotta hurt so bad just checking a kick.
I've had 3 or 4 fights now where just afterward, just for a month, it's just like, hurt my ankle again. Shit, I probably should have taken more time off, but I'd say that's probably the most like extensive recovery I have to go through is usually with the legs. Upper body, deal with general soreness just from doing that kind of activity, but it's usually good after the first couple of days or so. Marks, cuts, that stuff heals pretty quick too. It's always the legs. Legs always.
That's cool then, because like usually I'm like a couple days later I'm good. So yeah, a week. That's.
You got to think you're always walking on your legs. I mean,
that's true. That's true.
If you want to see a fight where me and my opponent were both pretty worse for wear afterward, go watch my fight with Jacob Bradford. He got a win over me, but it was very kick heavy. Looking on the outside, you probably won't be able to notice, but we saw each other a couple times in the hotel afterward. He was limping out of the hotel, and I just always have a hard time walking just because I'm constantly throwing kicks, and both of my ankles were just fucked up the next couple days afterward.
Wow.
So if you can get a look at that fight and just see how kick heavy we were, and just imagine like us walking the next day.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
Does that affect? Sorry, diabetic at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Does like the week after when your like body's like, I'm trying to like recover, does that affect your blood sugar compared to like I know that you're coming out of like that training week, so your blood sugars are probably going to be kind of tumultuous anyway, but
that's something I'll probably look at now that you said it. I usually just take the diabetes aspect of it as my body just getting used to not being in camp and back to eating whatever I want, as far as like that's how my blood sugars are. But now that you say it, maybe look a little bit more at like, maybe my body is taking a little bit slow to recover because my blood sugar is this or this or this. So something to look at.
It's like it's a give it. It's a two-way street because
I never considered that.
Diabetes
honestly,
is going to make it harder to recover, but also recovering is going to make diabetes kind of like, oh, it's
for sure.
Like anytime anything's going on with your body, your diabetes is going to be like, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right, and I'm going to react by like adding. Like just stirring shit into the pot.
No, I appreciate you saying that now. Because that's something usually like the recovery week, the week afterward, I'm just like, see ya, I ain't doing shit. But maybe there is something to look into as far as the diabetes and the thing and that week afterward, because that week afterward is usually just every time you wake up, it's constant soreness and stiffness, no matter.
Any supplements you recommend for recovery?
No, I'm not big on the supplements. If somebody was willing to sponsor me, I'd look into it. But
I thought you did have a sponsorship.
I had Aid Nation for a while there, but like I'm still cool with these people, but we just haven't been in contact since earlier this year. So if they got back into contact with me, I'd still put their stuff out there. But it's a two-way street.
yeah, for sure. Anything else?
I could probably think of a million questions and sit here and keep this young man all day.
Maybe we can do a follow up at some point.
I'd be down.
Another episode. Anything you want to like plug, or what's next for you?
Currently I am 3 weeks into a training camp to hopefully fight November 16th, just across the river in Newport and Covington. So looking at that right now. I did sign a contract, so I'm officially in, but there has been no announcement.
Is that a pro fight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Once you go pro, there is no going
back.
You're not
gonna go
There's
back.
no going back. Once you go pro, you're stuck with being a pro.
Your virginity.
Yeah, exactly. Born again virgin.
Born again amateur. So you're not putting on a fake mustache and sneaking into these amateur karate.
my name is Reeton Eiley. No. So looking at doing my second pro fight November 16th. I still don't got too much info as far as exact location, but I just know it's Newport.
What promotion is it? Do you know the sponsor?
This will be Ohio Combat League.
Ohio, okay, yeah, they're a big name. Big name around here.
I think
That's
his tournament.
His tournament is.
Is it an evening thing?
Yeah, it'll be, so since I'm a pro, the fight probably wouldn't take place until like 9 or 10 there.
We might be able to make it.
All day. All day long.
Club MMA is trying to get, so this is probably like the biggest camp we've had of fighters so far for MMA stuff. We've got 7 people wanting to fight, and it's to the point where we've had to split this camp into 2 different fight cards. So we're looking to get 4 people onto this November 16th fight. And then the following weekend, we're looking to get 3 other fighters fighting down in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So exciting stuff happening.
Yeah, we should try to make it. We should make it a school thing.
That'd be cool.
You know?
I'd love to go.
Yeah.
I'll be the one in the crowd screaming, probably wearing my "Trying Not to Die Today" shirt, which is my Type 1 shirt that I like to wear everywhere.
That's the spirit. Nah, and definitely if there's a follow-up to this, I'll make sure you guys get some of the T1 stuff too, for sure.
I love that. And thank you for being a true, like, in the real world, representing our set, because
I do my best.
You're doing more than Nick Jonas. Let's talk about it. Okay? The man could step up.
Or Brett
and
Michaels.
Not just...
I was going to say, Brett Michaels is the one I always grew up with. Like, you're a diabetic, but I'm sure you're not. You're not hanging
Nick
out like
Jonas
you are.
doesn't even talk about it unless he's getting paid by Dexcom.
Mm-hmm.
He should be like showing off those crazy abs and be like, "This is what diabetics look like." He doesn't do it, so good on you.
Thank you. And it's actually funny like that we talk about this because like it's in the nickname. But I've had one of my private lessons. He was my first private lesson, and he's been a private lesson for a year now. And my nickname just got brought up, and I explained. He's just like, "You're diabetic?" I'm just like, "Yeah, you didn't know that?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "That's what the T1's for, dude." So it kind of goes to show that, like, yeah, everybody's like on a different spectrum.
I mean, I'll be honest, like, because we have some mutual friends. I didn't know you, but like I heard you on, like, I listen to Fight Takes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched a couple of your fights and stuff. And honestly, it was pretty recent that I realized, like, I knew you were diabetic. And I saw Ethan T1 Riley all the time, and for some reason, I never put that together.
Did you just think he was talking about the Terminator?
Yeah,
like
that's
the T1
honestly,
So
I
there's
think
a
what I
double
thought.
take on it though,
Yeah.
too, because like it is T1, but also like I appreciate the Terminator stuff too, because
Absolutely.
even in my losses, I've never been dropped, I've never been put down. It's always been losses by decision. So
Hey, and we don't stop.
yeah,
We just keep coming.
yeah.
T1 was the right.
He's not human. He can't be reasoned.
We cannot be reasoned with.
Did you
He will not stop.
Did Jacob Mills send you the picture he made after one of my fights where I was screaming into the camera and he put like the
No, he
Terminator?
didn't.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't think I saw that.
I'll have to get that one to you
That's
guys. That's a good one.
amazing.
That's one I would like to like get on a T-shirt.
I was
one
just
day.
about to say, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing.
All right. Well, if nothing else, Alex, take us out.